That rusty adjustable wrench laying in the bottom of a coffee can in your garage. The one you keep meaning to haul out to the scrap trailer. I sold one just like it for $1,100. Rust and all, jaw stiff as a frozen gate hinge. Today we're going through 10 rusty tools hiding in garages and barns right this minute that are worth a whole lot more than anybody ever bothered to tell you. And I'd bet a cup of coffee one of them is inside 10 feet of where you're standing. Before we get rolling, drop a comment below and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Iowa, Alabama, Scotland, don't matter to me. I read every single one and I answer them too. And stick with me to number 4, because that's the one that fooled me personally. Name's Otis Granger. I'm 64 and I've spent 40 years picking barns, estate auctions, and Saturday morning farm sales across the Midwest. Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, Nebraska, a good chunk of Missouri. I've crawled through more hay mows than I can count and come home with a lot more junk than treasure, I'll tell you honest. But somewhere in there I learned how to read a tool, what the stamps mean, what the wear tells you. And I got tired of watching good people load that knowledge onto a scrap truck for 8 cents a pound because nobody ever walked them through it. So that's all this is, you and me over a tailgate. Now let me walk something back, because I'd rather you trust me than like me. Most rusty tools are just rusty tools. I've dumped out 5-gallon buckets of old iron and come away with nothing but sore hands. Out of a full bucket, maybe one thing in 50 is worth a second look, and 1 in 300 is worth real money. Those are the actual odds, and anybody telling you different is selling you something. But these 10 are the exceptions. These are the ones where the difference between $2 and $2,000 comes down to a stamp the size of your thumbnail, which is exactly why they end up in the trash. Here's why the old ones beat the new ones, and it isn't nostalgia talking. Before the Second War, tools were drop forged out of thicker steel because a man expected to use the same tool his whole life and then hand it to his son. There was no such thing as a throwaway hammer. Then the scrap drives came through in the 40s and cleaned out the barns. Anything with iron in it went to the war effort, and whole generations of hand tools disappeared into ship plate. What survived is scarce by accident, not design. All right, number 10. Number 10 is the adjustable wrench, the crescent wrench everybody calls them. Sliding jaw, that little knurled worm gear in the throat. Every house in America has one rolling around a drawer with the dead batteries. Adjustable wrenches built before about 1960 used a heavier, denser steel than what's sold in the checkout aisle today. Manufacturers shaved that down decade by decade. The old ones were built to outlast the man who bought them, and a lot of them did. But the wrench isn't what carries the value, it's the marking on the jaw. Flip yours over and look for a patent date stamped near the base of the fixed jaw. Anything reading back into the 20s or 30s pushes the number up hard. Back in 2011, I gave $2 for a coffee can of loose hardware at an estate sale outside Ottumwa. Bent nails, tap washers, and one little 4-inch adjustable so crusty the jaw wouldn't budge. I scrubbed enough grime off to read it, and there was an early Crescent Tool Company patent stamp, Jamestown, New York. I listed it exactly as I found it, and it brought $1,100. Now, that's the high end of the high end. Your ordinary old adjustable is a $30 to $80 wrench. 3 things to check. First, the jaw stamp. Second, does the worm gear still turn? Rust on the outside is fine. Rust seized in the threads is not. Third, the handle where it meets the head, look for hairline cracks. Crescent sits on top for names, but watch for Diamond Caulk Horseshoe out of Duluth and J.H. Williams too. Both get walked past because the names don't ring a bell. And size works backwards. A tiny 4-inch is rarer than a 12. Now, number 9, and I've watched 100 people walk right past this one at flea markets. Number 9 hardly looks like a tool at all. It's the hand-crank tabletop drill press. Not the big floor model, the little bench top, one with a cast iron base, a small crank wheel, and a chuck barely thicker than your finger. These went out to jewelers and hobby men in the early 1900s for work too fine for a brace and bit. Most got fed to the scrap drives because a small cast iron thing on a bench was an easy grab for a collection crew. What survived by luck. 8 years back, I pulled one out of a chicken house loft near Galena, Illinois, under a half-inch of dust and worse. Goodell Pratt out of Greenfield, Massachusetts, original crank wheel, everything turning. Sold it to a fella who collects nothing but bench tools for $280. Check the base for cracks first, because cast iron is strong but brittle, and these got dropped. Second, spin the chuck by hand and feel for grinding. Third, look underneath for a maker's stamp. Miller's Falls, Goodell Pratt, and Champion Blower and Forge, all built versions. Bigger is better here, since most were built small on purpose. And watch for a replaced crank. A modern handle bolted on knocks the value in half. Quick pause. If you're getting something out of this, hit that subscribe button. I put out a new one of these every week, and the next find might be the twin of something in your own shed. All right, number 8. Number 8 is the brace, that big wooden crank drill shaped like a sideways letter Z that you turn with your whole arm. Folks see Grandpa's antique, pretty on a wall, worth nothing, and that assumption is exactly why good ones slide through farm sales for pocket change. It isn't age that decides the money, it's the chuck. The earliest braces used a plain square socket that only took square shank bits. Later designs added a spring-loaded jaw that could grab a round shank too. And that one mechanical change is the whole ball game for collectors. Back in '09, I sold a Spofford pattern brace, the split head kind with the pinch bolt, for $240, and I thought I'd done well. Then a couple years later, I stood in a sale barn in Des Moines and watched a complete English ultimatum, brass framed with the ebony head, cross the block to a phone bidder at right around $1,400. I about swallowed my chew. That's the exceptional end, mind you. Your everyday farm brace is a $15 to $40 tool. Check 3 things. First, the chuck style. Square is older and usually better. Second, the head, that round knob you press against your palm, and whether the wood is original. Third, the sweep, and look for a stamp near the chuck or along the arc. Names to watch are Spofford, Barber, and anything marked ultimatum. One more thing everybody misses. Try to unscrew that head knob. Some hid a storage compartment inside, and a brace with its original bit still in there can bring double an empty one. Numbers 7 and 6 go together, because once one clicks, the other does too. First, the bench vise. Not the big shop vise bolted to a bench top, the little clamp-on kind that's screwed to the edge of a woodworker's table. Most people see rust and flaking paint and figure it's scrap iron. A few years back, I traded a fellow outside Beloit, Wisconsin, a truck battery for a box of shop junk he wanted gone. Bottom of the box was a clamp-on machinist vise, Athol Machine Company, swivel base intact, jaws barely worn. Sold it inside a week for $260 on a battery. Check the jaws first, then the swivel base and its lock lever, because that's what buyers want. Rust on the outside means nothing if the mechanism runs smooth. Look for the maker cast into the base. Athol, Parker, and Reed are worth chasing. Skip a cracked jaw plate, that kills it no matter whose name is on it. Now number 6, the block plane. Little cousin to the full-size hand plane, size to fit one palm. Size works backwards here too. The smallest ones, barely 3 inches long, are scarcer because fewer got made and even fewer stayed found. I picked one up for $1 in a Folgers tin full of fishing sinkers at a Sunday yard sale in Grinnell, Iowa. Low angle Stanley, early type, blade never ground away. $315 through a specialty forum. Check the blade angle first. Low angle versions handle nasty grain and buyers know it. Check the sole for flatness next, because a warped sole tanks the price no matter how pretty the rest is. Last, the adjustment knob on the tail. Originals are black or dark rosewood, and a bright mismatched knob tells you parts got swapped. 4 down, 6 to go, and number 5 is the one a small-town newspaper wrote about. Number 5 is a plain handsaw, specifically a Disston, the kind with a decorative brass medallion set into the applewood handle. People see a pitted blade and pitch the whole thing, and that's the mistake dealers count on. Flip the handle over and study that medallion. Disston changed the design a little almost every decade. The eagle, the keystone, the lettering, and those changes are a fingerprint you can date the saw by. And a snapped blade matters less than you'd think because some buyers want the handle alone. A few springs back, I was helping clean out an estate in Vinton, Iowa, and a sawtill on the wall held a broken number 12 Disston, blade cracked halfway across, handle black with dust. Family had it in the burn pile. That handle and medallion, dated to the 1870s, brought $640 at auction. And the county paper ran a little story on it. I've seen complete early ones push past 900. Check the medallion pattern first for your rough decade. Handlewood second, apple and beech are common, walnut is rare and worth more. Blade etching third, since those faded fast, and a readable 1 adds real money. Number 4 is the one I told you about at the start, the one that fooled me personally, the wooden level. Not the aluminum thing from the hardware store, the old solid wood kind with brass fittings and a glass vial. I spent years assuming the wood was the story. It isn't. The brass is. Heavy brass plates running the full length of the edges, what they call a brass-bound level, is the difference between a $20 level and a $1,000 one. I pulled one out of a hog barn outside Cedar Rapids, wrapped in a rotted feed sack on a shelf above the gate. Solid mahogany body, brass plates down both edges, a stamp near the end reading Stratton Brothers, Greenfield, Massachusetts. I figured it for a decorator piece, sold to a collector for $1,100, and that one still makes me shake my head. Stratton Brothers sits near the top, along with Stanley's early brass-bound line and the Davis Level and Tool Company. Check the ends for a stamped name first, Biles second, and don't panic over a cracked one. Replacements exist and buyers forgive it. What kills the price is a warped or split wood body, because you can't fix that without destroying the piece. Number 3 might be closer to your front door than your garage. It's the Plumb bob, that little brass or steel cone that hangs on a string to find dead vertical. Most folks find one tangled in a toolbox, figure it's an odd fishing weight, and into the junk drawer it goes. Old bobs, especially solid brass ones with a removable tip, carry serious weight with buyers. That removable tip is the whole thing. It let a carpenter swap in a fresh point when the old one wore blunt, and almost every one of those spares got lost. A bob that still has its spare tip jumps in price. I bought a machinist's roll-top chest at a sale in Moline, Illinois, mostly for the chest. Bottom drawer had 3 bobs tangled in old line. 2 were plain steel, maybe $15 a piece. The third was solid brass, stamped Star Edel on the base, spare point still threaded into the body. That one brought $440. Check the base for a name first. Starrett tops the list, then Stanley and Miller's falls. Twist the bottom point gently and see if it wants to unscrew. And weigh it in your palm, because solid brass feels heavier than plated steel. And that alone sorts your pile before you find a stamp. Don't throw out the string either. Original braided cord matters to purists chasing an untouched set. Number 2 hides in plain sight better than anything else on this list. It's the wooden folding ruler, not a tape measure, the kind that unfolds section by section on little brass joints. Everybody assumes the boxwood is the valuable part. Wrong. It's the brass extension slide, that skinny hidden ruler that pulls out of one end for measuring depth in a mortise. On nearly every survivor, that slide either snapped off or corroded solid sometime around the Eisenhower administration. The ones where it still runs free are what buyers hunt. I gave $6 for a retired carpenter's nail apron and box of small tools at a sale in Fremont, Nebraska. In the apron pocket, worn shiny from 40 years in a man's hand, was a Stanley number 68 boxwood brass bound, and that slide moved like it was oiled that morning. $290, all of it on account of that slide working. Ordinary folding rules run $10 to $30, so don't go quitting your job. But check that slide. One tool left, and I'd wager you've got one inside arm's reach of your workbench. And number one is the most overlooked tool on this whole list, the claw hammer, the plain kind sitting in nearly every garage in this country. It isn't about the head, it's about the handle wood. Old hammers used hickory almost without exception, and hickory that's been seasoning 80 or 90 years has a grain and density new hickory simply does not have. Put that together with a clean maker's stamp forged into the steel, and a $2 yard sale tool turns into something else. At a farm sale near Waterloo, I gave $5 for a nail keg with a dozen hammers in it. One was a hickory-handled Plumb that brought $80 all by itself. But underneath sat an early Estwing, the solid steel kind forged in one piece, head and handle together out of Rockford, Illinois. That one went to a collector for $730. Again, early production, top of the market. Most old hammers are a $20 to $60 tool. Check the head for a stamp first, Estwing on top, Stanley and Plumb right behind. Check the handle for tight, straight grain and no cracks running the length. And check the claw, because one rounded smooth from 50 years of pulling nails reads as honest history to a buyer, so long as there's no chip or break in it. Now here's the other half of the truth, because I don't want anybody mad at me. Condition decides everything. Surface rust is fine and even helps, but rust that seized a mechanism solid takes a tool out of the running. Cracked castings or scrap, full stop. And whatever you do, don't over clean it. I've watched a man take a wire wheel to a $200 plane and turn it into a $40 plane in 90 seconds. That dark patina is the tool's proof of age, and once you buff it off, it never comes back. Wipe the dirt, read the stamp, leave the rest alone. And here's what bothers me. Nobody tells you any of this. There's a whole quiet business built on you not knowing. The scrapper who offers to clean out your late father's shop for free. The flipper who buys the whole garage sale at 7 in the morning for $200 cash. And a smile, they aren't counting on luck. They're counting on the fact that nobody ever taught you to turn the wrench over. That's not a crime, it's just information, and information only stays valuable while it's uneven. So even it up. Before that trailer pulls out of your driveway, spend 20 minutes with a rag and a flashlight. Because that's the whole idea behind this list. Value hides in plain sight, not behind glass in a museum, not in some exotic thing you've never heard of, but in the ordinary, the wrench in the drawer, the hammer by the workbench, the saw leaning in the corner with cobwebs on it, 10 tools down, and I'd bet good money at least one of them is in your house right now, waiting on somebody to look twice. So go out to the garage tonight, flip over every handle, read every stamp, work every mechanism before it goes in the bin, then come back and tell me in the comments exactly what you found, and I'll tell you what I think it's worth. I read and answer every single one. I don't care how many there are. Next week, we're getting into old cast iron, the skillets and griddles folks scrub the value right off of. I'll see you then.